You see her? That's my daughter, the useless one. My mom didn't raise her voice when she said it. She didn't need to. The music was low. The laughter paused just enough. And somehow, everyone at that backyard barbecue heard her perfectly. I was standing 3 feet away, holding a glass of iced tea that had already started to sweat in my hand. The condensation slid down onto my fingers, slow and quiet, like it had nowhere else to go. I set the glass down on the edge of the patio table before it slipped. No one said anything to correct her. Not my dad. Not my aunt. Not the neighbors who had just been laughing 2 seconds ago. They just smiled in that careful way people do when they're not sure if something is a joke or not. My mom smiled too. Light. Polite. As if she had just made a harmless comment about the weather. I didn't mean anything by it, she added, brushing her hand against my arm like it was affection. She's just, still figuring things out. I nodded. Of course, I said. My voice didn't shake. It never does. I've had years to practice that. Someone across the table chuckled. My sister Emily was standing next to the grill, flipping burgers like she owned the moment. She laughed a little louder than everyone else. Not cruel. Just, comfortable. Like this was normal. Like I was the punchline she had heard her whole life. Tyja's always been the quiet one, she said, glancing over at me. You know how she is. I met her eyes for a second. Just a second. Then I smiled. I do, I said. And I meant it. I know exactly how I am. I know when to speak. I know when silence does more work than words ever could. A man my dad works with stepped closer, balancing a paper plate in one hand. So what do you do these days, Taj? He asked, casual, curious in that polite way people are when they don't expect much of an answer. My mom answered before I could. Oh, she dabbles, she said lightly. A little of this, a little of that. She waved her hand like she was describing a hobby. Not a life. Not a career. Just something small enough to fit between conversations. I tilted my head slightly, still smiling. I work with companies, I said. Mostly when something isn't working the way it should. He nodded like he understood. He didn't. People rarely do when you don't give them numbers or titles they recognize. Consulting? He asked. Something like that, I said. I didn't elaborate. I never do. Across the yard, the wind picked up just enough to move the napkins on the table. One of them slid halfway off the edge before stopping. No one noticed. My mom turned back to her guests. Emily just got another offer, she said proudly. Top firms. They're all looking at her. Emily smiled, just a little. I'm still deciding, she said. I want to make sure it's the right fit. Of course you do, my mom said. You deserve the best. I looked down at my hands. Clean. Steady. Still. She always does, I said quietly. No one asked me what I meant. They didn't need to. In this family, meanings are understood without being spoken. That's how we keep things comfortable. That's how we keep things quiet. The grill hissed behind us. Someone clinked a glass. Laughter came back like nothing had happened. Like no one had just reduced a person to a single word and left it there in the air for everyone else to carry. I reached for my iced tea again. It was warmer now. The ice had started to melt. I took a small sip anyway. You should think about something more stable, my mom said suddenly, turning back to me like the conversation had never really moved on. Something people can understand. I held her gaze. Calm. Respectful. I'll keep that in mind, I said. And I meant that too. I always keep things in mind. Especially words like that. Useless. They tend to come back. Just not in the way people expect. I left before dessert. That was the easiest part. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. My mom was still talking when I picked up my bag from the chair by the back door, her voice steady, warm, confident in the version of me she had already decided was true. "Drive safe," she said without looking at me. I paused for half a second, just enough to respond properly. "I always do," I said. She nodded like that was expected. Like everything about me was expected. Predictable. Contained. Outside, the air was cooler than it had been an hour earlier. The kind of late afternoon shift where the light softens but nothing really changes. I walked to my car, unlocked it, and sat there for a moment before turning the engine on. The steering wheel was warm under my hands. I did not rush. I never rush. My phone buzzed once on the passenger seat. I glanced at it, then looked away. There is a difference between reacting and choosing. I have spent years learning that difference. When I finally picked up the phone, the screen was still lit. One new email. Unknown sender. Subject line, application submission. I did not open it right away. Instead, I started the car, backed out slowly, and drove down the street without looking in the rearview mirror. I do not look back at places that have already decided who I am. Traffic was light. A few cars at the intersection, a red light that lasted longer than necessary, the quiet hum of an engine that does not demand attention. My phone buzzed again. This time I glanced down just enough to see the name. Emily Monroe. I did not react. Not outwardly. My hand stayed steady on the wheel. The light turned green. I drove. 10 minutes later, I was on the highway. 15 minutes after that, I was in my building's parking garage. Concrete. Clean lines. Predictable echoes. I parked in my usual spot, turned off the engine, and finally let the silence settle in fully. That is when I opened the email. "Dear hiring manager," it began. Formal. Structured. Careful. I read the first paragraph without moving. Then the second. Then the third. Each sentence placed exactly where it needed to be. Strong communication skills. Leadership experience. Proven ability to perform under pressure. I recognized the language. Not because it was impressive, but because it was familiar. It was the kind of language people use when they believe someone on the other side is worth convincing. I scrolled down. Resume attached. Portfolio link. References available upon request. And then the line at the bottom. I would be honored to contribute to the continued success of your company. I read that sentence twice. Not because I needed to. Because I wanted to understand what she thought success looked like. I locked my phone and stepped out of the car. The garage was quiet. My heels clicked against the concrete in a steady rhythm. Controlled. Even. I took the elevator up to the 12th floor. When the doors opened, the space was exactly as I had left it that morning. Glass walls. Clean desks. A few lights still on. The kind of office that does not need to prove anything to anyone walking in. I walked past the reception desk, past the conference room with the long table and the empty chairs, and into my office at the end of the hall. The name on the door was simple. Monroe Strategic Group. I set my bag down on the chair and placed my phone on the desk. For a moment, I just stood there. Looking at the screen. At her name. At the message she had sent without knowing who would read it. Or maybe she did know. Maybe she just did not think it mattered. I unlocked the phone again and opened the email one more time. Slower this time. Line by line. I noticed the details. The way she described her experience. The way she framed her decisions. The confidence. The assumption. The quiet expectation that she would be welcomed. I sat down and leaned back slightly, letting the chair settle behind me. Something people can understand, my mom had said. I glanced around the office. At the framed contracts. The report stacked neatly on the side table. The city skyline reflected in the glass. I understand exactly what I do. The question has never been about me. I picked up the phone and tapped reply. The cursor blinked on an empty screen. Waiting. I typed slowly. Not because I was unsure. Because words matter more when you choose them carefully. Thank you for your application, I wrote. I paused. Then continued. We would like to invite you for an interview. Another pause. One breath. I will be conducting it personally. I read the message once. Then again. No corrections. No hesitation. I pressed send and set the phone back down on the desk. The room was quiet again. The kind of quiet that does not feel empty. The kind that feels like something has just been set in motion. She adjusted her posture again, straighter this time, like she had just realized the room required more from her than she had planned to give. All right, she said carefully, then what do you see that others do not? I did not answer immediately. I let the question sit between us, not because I did not have an answer, but because I wanted her to feel the weight of asking it. That depends, I said finally, on what people are trying to hide. Her expression held steady, but her fingers tightened slightly on the edge of her folder. A small movement. Easy to miss. I do not miss those. Let us make this practical, I continued. I turned the tablet on the desk toward her. A case file. Clean. Structured. No identifying names. Just data. You are leading a team, I said. Performance is declining. The numbers suggest one thing. The people suggest another. What do you do? She leaned in, scanning the screen. Her confidence returned in layers. First her posture. Then her tone. I would start by aligning the data with individual accountability, she said. Identify where the breakdown is happening, then restructure responsibilities. I nodded slightly. And if the breakdown is not where the data says it is? I asked. She paused. Not long. But longer than before. Then the data is incomplete, she said. Or someone is not being fully transparent. Good, I said. So how do you handle that? She sat back a fraction, considering. You ask the right questions, she said. You create an environment where people feel comfortable being honest. I held her gaze. Comfortable, I repeated. Yes, she said. I let a brief silence follow. That is one approach, I said. It works when people want to be honest. She did not respond immediately. The shift was subtle, but it was there. The first crack in certainty. Daniel remained still beside me, observing without interruption. I turned the tablet back toward myself and tapped the screen once, closing the file. In this company, I said, we do not rely on comfort. We rely on clarity. Emily nodded slowly, absorbing that. Clarity can be uncomfortable, I added. That is usually when it is most useful. She gave a small, controlled smile. I can handle uncomfortable, she said. I am sure you can, I replied. My tone did not change. Not warmer. Not colder. Just precise. I opened another document. This one shorter. More direct. Tell me, I said, what do you believe makes someone valuable in a company like this? She answered quickly this time. Results, she said. Consistency. The ability to adapt. And how do you measure that? I asked. Performance metrics, she said. Client outcomes. Team feedback. I nodded once. External indicators, I said. Useful. But incomplete. She tilted her head slightly. What would you add? I leaned forward just enough to close the distance between us. Not aggressive. Just intentional. Self-awareness, I said. The ability to see your own limitations without someone else pointing them out. Her eyes held mine. There was no smile this time. That is not always easy, she said. No, I agreed. It is not. I let that settle. Then I reached for the resume again, tapping lightly on a specific line. You describe yourself as highly adaptable, I said. Tell me about a time you had to adjust your perception of yourself, not just your strategy. She hesitated. This time, the pause was clear. Not long enough to fail. Long enough to matter. I have always been open to feedback, she said carefully. That was not the question, I replied. Calm. Direct. She exhaled softly, almost imperceptibly. There was a project, she began, where I assumed I understood the client's needs better than I did. I had to step back and reassess. And what changed? I asked. My approach, she said. I listened more. I watched her for a second. Did your understanding of your own role change? I asked. She held my gaze again. This time, there was something behind it. Not uncertainty. Awareness. The beginning of it. Yes, she said quietly. It did. I nodded once. Good, I said. Then I leaned back again, returning the space between us to neutral. Because in this room, I continued, we are not evaluating what you have done. We are evaluating what you believe about yourself. The words did not land loudly. They did not need to. Emily sat very still, her hands now resting flat on the table. Not gripping. Not adjusting. Just still. The room felt different now. Not tense. Focused. Like something had shifted beneath the surface and both of us could feel it, even if neither of us had named it yet. I glanced at the clock. 20 minutes in. Enough time for introductions. Not enough for conclusions. I picked up the pen again and this time I wrote a single word on the paper in front of me. Slowly. Deliberately. Then I turned it slightly so she could see it. Value. She looked at it. Then back at me. Let us define that properly, I said. She looked at the word for a long second. Value. Not complicated. Not abstract. Just a single word sitting between us, waiting to be defined correctly for the first time in that room. All right, she said slowly, what does it mean here? I did not answer immediately. I let her sit with the question she had just asked, the same way I had let every other question settle before it mattered. It means, I said finally, that you are not evaluated by how you are perceived in comfortable environments. Her eyes did not move. Then what are you evaluated by? She asked. What remains true when the environment changes? I replied. The room went quiet again. Not empty. Just exact. She nodded once, absorbing that, then leaned forward slightly, her tone more careful now, more deliberate. Then I would say value is consistency under pressure, she said. The ability to deliver regardless of circumstance. That is close, I said. But it is still external. She frowned, just slightly. Not confusion. Adjustment. Then internal alignment, she corrected. Knowing what you bring and acting accordingly. I watched her for a moment. And what do you bring? I asked. This time, she did not answer immediately. Her eyes flickered down for half a second, then back up. A recalibration. I bring structure, she said. I bring clarity. I bring results. I nodded once. Those are functions, I said. Not identity. She inhaled quietly, her shoulders staying level. Then I bring judgment, she said. The ability to make decisions that move things forward. I leaned back slightly, letting the space open again. Better, I said. Then I tapped the paper once, right under the word. But still incomplete. Daniel shifted subtly in his seat, not speaking, just marking the moment. Emily's hand stayed flat on the table. No movement now. No adjustment. She was holding her position. What is missing? She asked. I held her gaze. Context, I said. The part where you understand not just what you are doing, but how you are seen while doing it. She did not respond. Not right away. The silence stretched just long enough to become uncomfortable. That is where clarity begins. Perception matters, she said finally. It does, I agreed. Because it determines access. She nodded slowly. Then you manage perception, she said. You control the narrative. I let a small pause follow that. That is what people think, I said. Until they walk into a room where the narrative is not theirs to control. Her expression did not change much, but something behind it shifted again. Not resistance. Recognition. The kind that does not announce itself. I reached for the resume once more and flipped it closed. No more documents. No more structure. Let us simplify this, I said. Yesterday, you were at a family event. Her eyes moved slightly. Just enough. Yes, she said. You spoke. People listened. She nodded again, slower this time. I did. And in that environment, I continued, how would you describe your value? She hesitated. This time, the pause was not strategic. It was real. That is different, she said carefully. Different how? I asked. She exhaled quietly, choosing her words. Family dynamics are not the same as professional environments, she said. They are not based on performance. I tilted my head slightly. Then what are they based on? She held my gaze, then looked down for a fraction of a second before answering. Perception, she said. I nodded once. Exactly. The word settled between us again. This time heavier. And what was the perception? I asked. She did not answer. Not immediately. Her fingers pressed lightly against the table, then relaxed. That I am successful, she said. That I am capable. I did not respond. I waited. She noticed. Of course she did. And that you are, she stopped. The sentence did not finish itself. I did. Not help it. Silence does more than interruption ever could. She looked at me again. Directly this time. No adjustment. No smile. Just recognition forming into something clearer. That you are not, she said quietly. I nodded once. That is correct, I said. No change in tone. No emphasis. Just confirmation. The room felt still in a different way now. Not tense. Not neutral. Defined. I picked up the pen again and drew a single line under the word on the paper. So here is the question, I said. If value is not what people say it is in one room, and not what you claim it is in another, I paused. Just long enough. What is it when both are forced into the same space? She did not answer. Not yet. But this time, she did not need to. Because for the first time since she walked into that office, she understood exactly what was about to happen next. She did not look away this time. Not when the question settled between us. Not when the silence stretched just enough to remove every safe answer she might have prepared. She held my gaze, steady, controlled, but there was something new underneath it now. Not confidence. Not uncertainty. Awareness. It becomes truth, she said finally. Her voice was quieter than before, but it did not break. I nodded once. Yes, I said. It does. I let that sit. No movement. No interruption. Just the weight of a word that does not need to be explained once it is understood correctly. Daniel shifted slightly beside me, his attention fixed on her now, not on the process. That is when the room changes. When observation becomes participation without a single word being spoken. I leaned forward just a fraction, enough to close the distance again. And truth, I continued, does not adjust to protect perception. She exhaled slowly, her fingers finally lifting off the table and resting lightly in her lap. A small change. But it meant something. No, she said. I reached for the paper again and turned it fully toward her this time. Value. Underlined. Clear. So tell me, I said, what is your value when the perception you relied on no longer holds? She did not answer immediately. This time, she did not try to. Her eyes dropped to the word. Then lifted again, but more slowly. Measured. Intentional. It depends on what is left, she said. I nodded. Exactly. I leaned back, giving her space again. So what is left? I asked. The question did not rush her. It did not need to. She sat there, still, for a moment longer than any of her previous pauses. Then she spoke. Capability, she said. And the ability to prove it. To whom? I asked. She met my eyes again. This time, there was no hesitation. To the person who decides, she said. I allowed the smallest shift in my expression. Not approval. Not dismissal. Just acknowledgement. And who is that? I asked. She held the silence for a second, then answered. You are. The room did not react. It did not need to. That was the moment. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just precise. I nodded once. Correct, I said. Then I picked up her resume again, but this time I did not open it. I simply held it between my fingers. Yesterday, I said, you spoke in a different room. Her shoulders remained steady, but her focus sharpened. Yes, she said. You were confident, I continued. Comfortable. Certain of your position. She did not interrupt. She knew better now. And in that room, I said, you defined value very clearly. I paused. Just long enough. Not through results. Not through capability. Her eyes did not leave mine. Through perception, she said. I nodded once. Through a single word, I added. The silence shifted again. Not heavier. Clearer. She understood exactly which word I meant. I did not need to repeat it. She had already heard it enough. So now, I continued, my tone unchanged, we are in a different room. I placed the resume down on the table, flat, centered between us. Same people, I said quietly. Different context. Daniel's presence beside me remained still, but it anchored the space in a way that made the moment unavoidable. This was not personal. This was structure. This was definition. Emily's hands rested lightly together now. No tension. No performance. Just stillness. Then the question is simple, I said. If the same person is seen two completely different ways in two different rooms, I paused again, letting the logic complete itself before the words did. Which one is real? She did not answer right away. She did not try to escape it either. She sat with it. Fully. That is where most people fail. Not in answering. In staying. But she stayed. And when she finally spoke, her voice was different. Not softer. Not weaker. Just, stripped of anything unnecessary. The one that holds under pressure, she said. I nodded slowly. That is one definition, I said. There is another. I let the silence return, but this time it carried something else with it. Direction. The one that does not need an audience, I said. The words did not land loudly. They settled. And once they settled, they did not move. Emily's eyes flickered, just once, then steadied again. She understood. Not everything. Not yet. But enough. I glanced at the clock. 40 minutes. The structure had done its work. Now came the part people remember. I folded my hands together on the table. Let us finish this properly, I said. She did not move when I said it. Not immediately. The room held still around her, the kind of stillness that does not come from silence, but from something settling into place whether you are ready for it or not. All right, she said after a moment, her voice steady but no longer carrying the same certainty it had when she first walked in. Then finish it. I studied her for a second. Not her posture. Not her words. Her alignment. That is what matters at this stage. You came here believing you understood your value, I said. Based on what you have been told. Based on how you have been treated. She did not interrupt. That was new. You also came here believing this room would operate the same way, I continued. That your preparation would translate directly. That your confidence would carry. She nodded once. That is fair, she said. It is, I agreed. In most places. I let that settle before continuing. This is not most places. Daniel remained still beside me, but his attention had shifted completely now. Not to her. To the process. He knew what came next. Emily did not. Not fully. Not yet. I picked up the pen again, but this time I did not write. I simply held it, letting the pause extend just enough to remove any remaining illusion of control. Let me ask you something simple, I said. If I remove your resume, your credentials, your references, what remains that justifies your presence here? She did not answer right away. Not because she did not have words. Because for the first time, she understood that the wrong words would not protect her. My ability to think, she said carefully. To adapt. To contribute. I nodded slightly. Those are potential, I said. Not proof. Her jaw tightened just enough to register. A controlled reaction. Still learning. Then the opportunity to demonstrate them, she replied. Better. More precise. I allowed a small pause. Opportunity is not granted automatically, I said. It is extended based on expectation. She held my gaze. And you do not have that expectation? She asked. I tilted my head slightly. I have not decided, I said. The truth, delivered without emphasis, always lands harder than anything else. The room shifted again. Not visibly. Structurally. She understood that now. This was not a conversation. It was a measurement. I placed the pen down and folded my hands. There is one more variable we have not addressed, I said. Context continuity. She frowned slightly. Meaning? I met her eyes directly. Meaning the same individual, observed in two environments within 24 hours. The words were simple. The implication was not. She did not speak. She did not need to. Yesterday, I continued, you participated in defining someone else's value. I did not say the word. I did not need to. It was already in the room. It had been there since she walked in. Today, I said, you are asking to have yours evaluated. Her fingers moved slightly in her lap. Not restless. Acknowledging. Those two positions are not independent, I added. They inform each other. She inhaled slowly, then nodded. I understand that, she said. Do you? I asked. Calm. Direct. No accusation. Just clarity. She held my gaze longer this time. I think I am starting to, she said. I let a brief silence follow that. Then I leaned forward just enough to bring the conversation to its final edge. Then let us remove everything else, I said. No titles. No assumptions. No family dynamics. I paused. Just this. I turned the paper fully toward her again. Value. Underlined. Still unchanged. Define yours, I said. The room went completely still. Not tense. Not pressured. Just exact. This was the point where most people reach for something safe. Something rehearsed. Something that sounds right without being tested. She did not. Not this time. She looked at the word. Then back at me. And when she spoke, her voice was different again. Not quieter. Not louder. Just clear. It is not what I say, she said. And it is not what others say when it is easy. She paused. Just once. Then continued. It is what holds when both are tested at the same time. I did not move. Not outwardly. But the answer registered. Not perfect. But real. I nodded once. That is correct, I said. Then I leaned back, letting the space return to neutral for the first time since she had walked in. So now, I added, we can finally discuss whether it exists. She did not look away when I said it. Not this time. The question was no longer hanging between us. It had already landed. It had already done its work. The only thing left was the answer neither of us needed to say out loud anymore. I watched her for a moment longer, not to test her, but to confirm what had shifted. And it had. Not in her posture. Not in her tone. In her awareness. All right, I said quietly, then we are finished with the evaluation. Daniel remained still, but I felt the shift beside me. The structure had closed. The outcome was already understood. Emily exhaled slowly, her shoulders lowering just a fraction, like she had been holding something in place without realizing it. So, she said, her voice careful again, what happens now? I picked up her resume and aligned it with the edge of the table. Clean. Exact. The same way it had been when she walked in. Now, I said, we separate two things that should never have been confused. She did not interrupt. She was listening differently now. Your potential, I continued, and your position. She nodded once. And, she asked. Your potential is real, I said. It is structured. It is capable. It is developing in the right direction. I paused. Just long enough to let that land without softening what would follow. Your position, I added, was never real. The words did not come with weight. They did not need to. Truth does not require force. It requires clarity. She held my gaze, absorbing it fully. No reaction. No defense. Just acceptance. I see, she said quietly. I nodded once. Good, I replied. I stood up then, not abruptly, not slowly. Just at the exact moment the conversation required movement. The room shifted with it. Daniel followed, closing his tablet without a sound. Emily remained seated for half a second longer, then stood as well. Not out of habit. Out of recognition. I walked to the window, giving the space a different orientation, then turned back to face her. There is one more thing, I said. She waited. I did not rush it. Yesterday, I continued, you were comfortable defining someone else without full context. Her expression did not change, but her attention sharpened again. Today, I said, you experienced what happens when context is restored. She nodded once. I did. I let a brief silence follow that. That matters more than anything on that resume, I said. She looked down at the paper on the table. Value. Still underlined. Still unchanged. So what is your decision? She asked. Direct. No hesitation. I respected that. I walked back to the desk and placed my hand lightly on the edge of the table. You are not ready for this position, I said. No apology. No hesitation. Just alignment with what had already been established. She did not react immediately. Not outwardly. She simply nodded once. Understood, she said. Then she added, will I ever be? I studied her for a second. Not the question. The intent behind it. That depends, I said. On whether what you understood in this room stays with you when you leave it. She held my gaze. It will, she said. I believed her. Not completely. Not yet. But enough. I reached for a card on the desk and slid it toward her. Not an offer. Not a rejection. Something else. There is a program, I said. Entry level. Structured. No assumptions. No shortcuts. She looked at the card. Then back at me. You would be evaluated the same as everyone else, I added. No advantage. No disadvantage. She nodded slowly. I understand. I paused. Then added one final line. And no one in that room will care who you are outside of it. The words settled exactly where they needed to. She picked up the card, holding it carefully between her fingers. Not tightly. Not loosely. Just enough. Thank you, she said. Not for the opportunity. For the clarity. I nodded once. You are welcome. She turned then, walking to the door with a different rhythm than when she had entered. Not slower. Not faster. Just, measured. At the door, she paused for a brief moment, then looked back. Tige, she said. I met her eyes. Yes? She hesitated. Just once. Then she said, I am glad it was you. I held her gaze for a second, then nodded. So am I said. She left without another word. The door closed quietly behind her. The room returned to stillness. Daniel exhaled softly beside me. That was, he started, then stopped. Clear, I said. He nodded. Yes. I walked back to the desk and looked down at the paper one last time. Value. Underlined. Unchanged. I picked up the pen and drew a second line beneath it. Not heavier. Not darker. Just final. Because some words do not change. They just wait for the right room to mean something.